Do you like planes? Well, here are some planes. Yeah! G'day, I'm Ash, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be checking out, well, 5 more aircraft that should be added to War Thunder. Now, as you know, we used to do a series of lists of vehicles that we'd like to see come to War Thunder, and I will be returning to that format because, well, it's kind of interesting, and instead of doing 10 vehicles this time, we'll do 5, that way we can talk about them in a little more depth. But anyway, give us a moment as we sort of enjoy, relax, and unwind into aircraft goodness. And in today's video, we'll unpack some of the wacky, strange, and often really cool looking aircraft that probably should be in War Thunder. Now, number 1 on the list is a very interesting, weird looking fighter aircraft. Specifically, a prototype vehicle which undertook one of the 2 combining elements of what you would call wacky weirdness. This is a Soviet biplane fighter aircraft, traditionally powered by a piston engine, except with 2 subsonic ramjets, which are gasoline burning by the way, slapped on the underneath of your underside of the wings. What was you could call a very interesting design, because 2 DM4 engines were installed underneath this particular aircraft, and the experimental plane was basically designed to sort of improve general flight characteristics and increase acceleration. What you do get, however, is a supplementary engine aircraft, and on this basis the I-153DM was flown, and what you get is an aircraft that had more engines which added as much as 50 kilometers or 31 miles an hour for a total of about 30 to 40 flights that were undertaken. In War Thunder, it probably wouldn't be as good as people seem to accept the fact that it would be. It has exactly the same armament as a regular I-15. However, the weight of the ramjets probably might make it turn a bit less, but in favour of a little more acceleration, it could be one of those wacky aircraft that War Thunder just typically could need. Aircraft number 2 is a seaplane, particularly a jet-powered flying boat that was in use by the US Navy. This is the Martin P6M-2 Seamaster. What you get is a very fast flying boat that has 2 20mm cannons in a rear remote operated turret, a rotating bomb bay that holds 30,000 pounds of mines and various other ordnances, 4 Pratt & Whitney J75 P2 turbo engines, and, well, a whole lot of cool factor because it's a float plane. Now, the 2 special bombs that it comes equipped with is a Mark 91 nuclear bomb, it can hold 2 of those, or it can get a Mark 28 nuclear bomb. As for the other ordnance, which I mentioned before, 15 times Mark 25 2000 mines, and there are 28 Mark 36 Mod 1 1,000-pound mines, and 36 Mark 50 Mod 0 500-pound mines as well. No conventional ordnance in terms of a regular bomber, but a cool avionics system that has an automatic navigation and mine laying system, and a top speed at sea level of about 1,002 kilometers an hour, or about 685 miles. For something that is just a boat shaped and can fly, that's incredible, and it has a really unique sort of set of looks to it. Unfortunately, because it doesn't have your typical ordnance layout or sort of, typical bombs, it might have a lack of usability and maybe only subject to that of naval, but it could be used as a bit of fun, so it's an option at least. Number 3 on the list is actually an aircraft that I've been wanting for a very long time, and to satisfy some of you high-tier jet players, I really want the MiG-25. Essentially what it is an interceptor and supersonic reconnaissance aircraft that is among the fastest military aircraft to ever see combat. They built 1,186 of them, at least according to Wikipedia. And War Thunder wise, there's a lack of sort of Cold War, aircraft. I'd love to see more early sort of Cold War stuff. And the manufactured between 1964 and 1984. The introduction date was 1970, and it was an incredibly cool aircraft. Now, of course, there are several different prototype variants, and there is also several different interceptor variants as well. But the reconnaissance ones, I don't know. Whichever version, I just want a MiG-25 in War Thunder. Is that too much to ask? It's so sad that we don't actually have one. Now, used by Algeria, Armenia, Bulgaria, Belarus, India, Iraq, Kazakhstan, Libya, Russia, Syria, Turkmenistan, and Ukraine. And what you get is a really cool sort of specifications. Specifically, this is the MiG-25P, but you get what is a top speed of 3,000 kilometers an hour, or Mach 2.83 at high altitude. Now, it does get a couple of interesting missiles. You get the R-40s and various R-60Ms, but that's kind of all that this machine really would need. I just want to see something that can go really uber fast, that looks absolutely like an F-14, but better, don't tell F-14 fans, and really performs in that sort of high-speed role that War Thunder kind of misses in the early Cold War. Now, another thing that I really love within War Thunder is float plane fighters, and while I wish you could get a lot of the naval aircraft that are present within War Thunder in the air tech trees, thank you phone, I didn't need an interruption, but here we are. Essentially, this is the Wildcat fish, the F4F-3S. Essentially, it's inspired by the appearance of the A6M2N, and a modification of which just allows for twin floats and an added tailplane to allow for lateral stability, as well as some auxiliary fins were added to the tailplane because, well, you know, it was insufficient, and then a ventral fin was also added later. That way you can, maneuver yourself in the water properly. But this thing was first flown on 28th of February 1943, but the weight and drag of the floats reduced the maximum speed to 241 miles an hour, or 388 kilometers. And as the performance of the basic airframe without the floats was already below that of the Zero, the F4F-3S was clearly of extremely limited usefulness in any case. And, well, the construction of airfields at forward bases were surprisingly quick, and they didn't necessarily need for it. But in War Thunder, it could be one of those things that just allows you to cap a point, or land at an airfield, or just do some wacky stuff, because it has the same armament and the same bomb loadout that the regular Wildcat could accrue. And I just think that having more float planes in War Thunder is generally the better idea. The idea is to have more, not just less, because, well, why not? Could it be an event vehicle? Absolutely. Could it be a crafting vehicle, or, dreams come true? Could be anything. The problem is its relative, size, and while I love ramming things with floats, sometimes it can get in the way of, as I said, your general flight performance. So War Thunder, it's negligible because it's just a modification of an existing vehicle, and that's all you really have to do with that one. Now, number 5 is another American experimental aircraft. I know I've been quite heavy on the American aircraft this time around, but there is a limiting number of factors of cool aircraft that I can also shove in. This is the McDonnell XB-67. Also known as the Moon Bat. What I love about this particular aircraft is just its flat pancake nature. Unlike the Flapjack, which we've got here in the background here, this thing was basically, a long-range interceptor and heavy fighter. And though laminar airfoils sections in the cells and the wings in an attempt to reduce drag was introduced, it faced numerous engine problems and had, well, the potential to explode mid-flight. What you do get is 2 turbocharged Continental inverted V12 engines and 6 37 M4 cannons, not installed in the prototypes, but was planned. So in War Thunder, you'd have to give it a little bit of liberty, but essentially what you get is, well, a heap of interesting sort of looking vehicle with a lot of DECAL. Now, the prototype was written off as a total loss. The aircraft had logged 43 flight hours before being out of action. The tragic accident, along with the engine problems, caused the project to be halted, and then McDonnell and the Army decided to terminate the project for the good. Although the final test report was generally positive, the aircraft offered no significant advantages over existing fighters that were already in service. And so, while it does necessarily have one pilot and, a decent top speed, its gross weight and sort of, in flight performance generally were mixed to average. The first prototype was armed with 6 37 M4 cannons firing 45 rounds per gun for a total of 270 rounds. The second prototype configuration was 2 37 M4 cannons with a total of 90 rounds, and then 4 20mm cannons with 664 rounds, or 166 rounds per gun. And what could have been interesting was that this thing could have been, a new P-47 type aircraft. But In War Thunder, well, we know things to be fabricated a little bit. We know certain aircraft do have unhistorical armament. For example, the Flapjack could actually have 20mm cannons, but we don't have that version. And the Ho 229 also had cannons, but in the real world, it didn't necessarily fly with them. And there's a heap of other Russian examples, and la-da-da-da-da, it doesn't necessarily matter. There are plenty of other aircraft that I could have chosen, and I want you in the comment section down below to let me know your favourite 5 aircraft are, and to let me know if I've missed anything. I understand this is a bit of a hack job video, but I'm running on limited time, limited caffeine, and a full-time job, and it's not fun to deal with a lot of family issues on the side. So I apologise for the lack of content recently, but that's the reason why we've been gone. Anyway, thank you very much for spending your time with me. Hopefully you had a wonderful day, and you know, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And if you can, hype the video for me, because that'll help the channel. All right. And also get my decal, you know, 3% off in the description store thing if you want to buy anything for War Thunder. All right. Bye-bye.